distance between the swivels?
Glad you asked. Right there. No, we make kite lines now that are flossed. So just to give you the answer to your question, it's about 75, 80 feet between marks. We would put them a little closer on a monofilament kite line. How we rig our kite lines for everyday fishing is we have an 80-pound monofilament kite line that we tie all these floss marks on. I haven't started producing those for sale yet because most people aren't using 80 mono. You're only using that in 15, 20 knots of wind or more, and that's mainly so you can handle the line and it's not very thin 80-pound spectra cutting your fingers. And on top of that, when it's real windy, sometimes it's stormy. Who in the audience has ever had a kite line just break for no reason? Just break, like stormy, maybe a little overcast, and all of a sudden the kite just falls and the line is broken in the middle of the line. That's static electricity. I've probably broken 20 or 30 at least kite lines. I've had them break simultaneously. You hear a little buzz and then both kite lines fall, your clips go in the water, it's a mess. And so there's an example where I would tie like a 30 or 40 pound kite line and only fish mono. There are days when we go charter fishing and I'll tell all my crew guys, do not, it's just one of those days it's going to be just, you know, overcast, a little lightning here and there. Do not put a braid kite line out. It gets damp and gets static electricity, it'll burn right in the middle of the kite line. When you wind it up, it's actually not frayed like a break, it's actually like sealed from the burn, from the electricity. I know I've lost at least 20 kite lines, maybe 30. I've lost like 4 in one day. Like, you know, I'm not that bright sometimes, you know. And anyways, I would say most of what I know is because I made a lot of mistakes. So anyways, we make the kite lines, they're about 100 feet to the first mark because you want some elevation. So another thing about wind, talking about tumbled wind and clean wind. The higher your kite goes, the cleaner and the stronger the wind. So on a day when you got 8 knots of wind, you want a big distance to your first clip. Even though that seems contrary to common sense, you want to get that kite elevated. Bob Lewis was my first captain in '79. I was 16 years old and I never kite fished, and you should have seen him trying to get it through my thick head, you know. 30-pound mono on a light wind day, letting the kite out like 150 feet, and I'm like, I don't understand, but in that more line, it was like better wind. And sure enough, he was right, you know. You'd see that kite way up there, and then we tie on the first swivel. We only fished 2 baits. Bob never fished 2 kites, even though he was alive when John Dudas Sr. discovered how to fly the 2 kites with lead. He's the one that taught all of us. But Bob was still alive, then Jimmy and I were Bob's mates. That's kind of how it started. And when Bob had the heart attack, Jimmy started running the boat. In later years, when he got better, we tried to get him to fly 2 kites and never fly 2. It's always 1 kite, sometimes 3 baits. And but he was really good at it. He pioneered it, and really a privilege to get to fish with him. It was really neat. But anyways, the distance between baits, there's a little logic behind that. You want the baits close enough that if you get a multiple up, they can go from bait to bait, and 75 feet is about right. You get bit, let's say on a middle, you can bring the kite in and swim your long into that same zone. We do that, or let the kite out, etc. The other thing is, you don't want to be so close that 2 baits can swim together, or a sailfish can eat, or any fish can eat 2 baits at once. When you get inside of that 70 feet, that can happen, especially if your corks aren't properly elevated. You know, if your corks are laying in the water, I've had many times where a fish comes up, he's eating 2 baits. So, especially on like a south wind, they're swimming at you, and you know, you have your baits a little low, and you know, you'll end up sometimes because they're coming right at you, or south or north wind. Yeah. Any other questions? So I'm going to go into clips. So this kite line has floss marks of 3 sizes, and the 3 sizes are the same whether it's on a R2 clip, which is a big clip with a metal arm, and an M2 clip, which is a clip that really holds a proprietary ring. So this stainless ring fits in that clip. This is the standard, you know, this is standard issue for us kite fishing. That light clip goes back to what I said about Bob. You know, he wants high elevation, I want high elevation and turn it into spread. You gain that with a lighter clip. So these 3 clips and those big clips all could be used on the same kite line because all of their inner holes are the same. They're all 1/16, 1/8, 3/16, and 1/4. So no matter which clip you use, your kite line will fit. on those. You just cut the snap off at the end and change clips. The reason you would use the larger clips would be someone like Art Sapp fishing the meat fish tournaments. He doesn't want the cork and he doesn't want the ring for a kingfish to bite his line. So he'll just capture his line in that arm, which lays perpendicular to the kite line. This is the M2 clip here. See how it's oriented perpendicular to the kite line? This is rigged up as an outrigger clip. We primarily use the R2s. We use the R2s as outrigger clips, but we can use these also for the kites. But if you can imagine, if this is the kite line, you would just open the arm, put your fishing line in it, and close it, and now the line's traveling at a right angle to the arm. So you don't need a ring. The diameter of that arm is the same diameter as this ring, actually a tiny bit thicker. And all those arms are hand polished 316 stainless, made in the US. So, they're all high quality. So whether you use a ring on the little mini clip, the M2, or whether you use an R2, those, the idea here, these rings are a little more polished than the owners. For years I used owners, and I would still use them if that's all I had. But we found rings. It took about 2 years of searching, but we finally found them that are kind of polished and more rounded. The reason that's important is it takes less weight to drop. How many times you had a bait that doesn't want to drop? And that has a lot to do with how polished your rings are. So, any questions on that? In this bag of clips, we put the swivels that you can tie your own kite line. So if you don't want to use that kite line, the clips come with the swivels that you need to stop. And again, they'll stop either set of clips, the big ones as well. So, I'm not trying to sell you on the products. There's anything that's similar to that I would use. It's just that's what I build the products for the needs that I've seen. So. The next thing I'll talk about is bridling. So the bands come in 2 sizes and 2 colors. We have clear and black. The UV resistance in both of them is about the same. And I like the black mainly because as I get older, I can find the black when they fall on the deck. Clear's kind of hide on me. But, and really, if you think about it, you got a black hook, right? And when you're done bridling the bait, that black rubber band's just a little bump there. So, a lot of people like to buy clear because they think it's, more invisible. But honestly, I wouldn't be scared to use either one. Can I lean on you one more time? So, I'm going to go through bridling a bait. So the idea behind these needles, I know they look a little strange, they're plastic, they're kind of square-sided. The square-sided shape is so that when they lay on a rocket launcher or any flat surface, they don't roll. I own about 3,000 stainless needles that I can't use because the prototypes are great, but when I got them, they all had sharp edges and the eyes were closed, and I had to take a feeler gauge and open them all up. And I just became apparent pretty quick that's not for me. And a friend of mine is really talented in the area of molding and in new synthetics. And this is a fiber-filled synthetic that's very strong. You can break it, obviously, it's plastic. But the diameter of this needle, even though it looks a little bigger than stainless, it's no bigger than if you put a micrometer on the barb of that hook and poke it through the bait. It's the same size. So when we bridle a bait, you're really just pushing the needle through the back of the bait. If you notice, I had the band inverted on the hook. So in other words, it doesn't come off the hook. And inside these needles, a couple things that we gained when we molded them is we could microscopically radius every edge. So there's never going to be a nicked band. And secondly, when you look inside the jaw of that needle, there's a little button. And that button's designed to take these bands and snap them in place. So let's say I'm fishing and I don't have a bait rod and I want to keep a rig ready. I can invert the band, put the needle on it, stick it in my grip, and all day long I'm seconds away from bridling a bait. Way quicker than, the alternative. A stainless needle where the band could fall off, etc. Anyways, I go through the back of the bait. I cannot believe it, I got on the first shot. Total guess. Anyways, I only spin it when I go, through the bait, around the point of the hook. I spin it only once or twice, and then I just put the hook, I don't know if you noticed, I just back the hook up and go under that band. And then basically the bait sits there. I like my baits hooked a little further forward in the back so that as I move the boat, they're pulled more horizontally. If you hook them in the middle of the back, what happens when you start moving the boat, your bait looks like that going through the water. And I've caught a lot of doubles and triples because my bait's presented properly as I'm pulling them. You know, you're fighting a fish. All my boats are single engines, so we fight all our fish going forward. We don't back up very much. So whenever we get bit, we roll, you know, most of the fish jump offshore anyways, and we typically just roll around on them and start. I only move the boat as fast as I think I can present the bait to get another bite, typically, unless it's a super important fish. You know, we need that fish quick for some final result. But other than that, you'll see a lot of times you won't even know we're hooked up other than fish jumping. You know, we're just kind of putzing over to the fish, and now they're really pulled hooked. So that might be the decision you make where you hook them. You know, this probably gets a little bit more bite. In other words, if I were just kite fishing and I wasn't fighting a fish, I'd probably say I'd get more bites hooked in the back. But when I'm hooked up, I get more bites hooked in the nose. Granted, you can't go out there and change it, so you got to make a decision early on. You know, do you think they're really going to be biting today? You got north wind and they're going to be tailing. I'm all on the nose because I feel like I'm going to be hopefully fighting fish all day. So that's kind of what goes on in that squirrel cage. So. The only other thing you need to know about hooking baits is if you get into a tailer or a free jumper, we sometimes hook them in the tail, and that's a lot for distance. Think about like what the guys did down in Marathon this year, catching 50 and 60 fish in a day. A lot of that was done by casting at fish. I can almost guarantee you most of their fish were hooked about right there, because when you wing them, they shoot like a dart. So you get another 20, 30 feet out of the cast. And then when it hits the water, what's the one enemy of a sailfish when he's trying to eat a bait? The leader. But when he's hooked in the tail, you just put a little pressure on him and the bait just, like when you see him committing, you just stop the line a little bit and he eats it on a clean bite. So those are all little tricks that will help you, but that's the only time I wouldn't be hooking them in the back of the nose. That's it. Thank you. Got to be a question in there somewhere. Do I have to start giving things away to create a question? Go ahead. Here, look. Here, it's a koozie. Oh, you already got one. Holy cow.
I know about outrigger.
Okay, we happen to have an outrigger. This works good. So the R2 clip, we named it R2 really for the rigger, so that's what its primary use. The idea here is, you know, all the years that we use blacks and roller trollers and trippies and all the different ones, one thing that's pretty consistent on at least 3 of them is that the release wire is parallel to the line. And so when you're trying to fish, you're kind of contorting that line around that angle. I wanted to make a clip that had the wire in the proper orientation. This is what came out of it. It's about 3 years, and I don't want to tell you how much money, but it was a journey. But we're on version 7. I'll leave it at that. Now, some of the version changes are as simple as going from one clip that was used on both sides. So now imagine how this works. If this were the port outrigger, this would be oriented properly. The wire would open downward like that. Can you see that? But on the starboard outrigger, it would open up on some of our earlier versions. So we made a mirrored version. So now both of them, we have a port and a starboard clip. The guys in Australia last year trolling baits that were upwards of 20, 25 pounds. This clip will lift 25 pounds off the dock. You can put a 25-pound weight down, tighten it down, and I've lifted it multiple times. They were snapping the tension screw trying to get 30 pounds. And it was a 440 screw, so we went to a 640. So that was one of the versions. So, you know, all these things, that's part of the journey, right? You think you got everything perfect. The guys in New England were using them with big 130-pound outfits for bluefin tunas and big spreader bars. And they stand there. I don't know if you've ever seen like the kingfish buggers, how they jig their lines. And they jig these spreader bars to make them jump with 130. And one guy got it caught on this radius bump back here. And so now my newest version has a full bridge. And I use that bridge to put a P and an S because everybody is asking me, which one's port, which one's starboard? You notice this little bead right here? Just remember the bead always stays closest to the angler. And the idea behind the bead is that, you see how that clip rotates? There's a ball inside of it. It was funny, version 1, I took my first version out fishing and I was so excited. I got a bite, it opened up, I caught the fish, I thought, man, these are awesome, finally. And then the second bite I missed, and I wound the snap swivel to here, and remember this was rigid. And I'm in the cockpit down here, and I start pulling and pulling, and I can't get it to open because the arm has to rotate downwards. So then the second version had a ball. So that's how you get 7 versions. But, you know, it's been 3 years. But I think we're finally ready. So, yeah, go ahead.
On that double, you're running them both to the end eye. Wouldn't normally you run the second one to the second eye?
Yeah, this was just for demonstration. Normally, to get back to his question, I'm sorry I kind of got to talking about my baby. We fish the outriggers with release clips so that when you want to release a line, you have a prescribed tension. So all of these clips have a way that you can add or take away tension. And what the outriggers do is they really cause you to cover a lot more water. So they were nice enough to give me this board. I better use it. So let's say you were just trolling in your boat and you just had rods in the covering boards. You know, this is going to be your zone of coverage, you know. But if you had outriggers, now this becomes your box. If you're kite fishing, this becomes your box. So now you understand a lot of what we talked about tonight is about coverage. That's why we go through all these crazy things. We're trying to get better coverage. That's why you would use an outrigger. You want to cover more ground with your baits. And this long outrigger, and some guys use 20, 25, 30 foot outriggers. When you put this clip on there and you advance it all the way to the top, once you put your fishing line in it, you see how now you can spread your baits out further. Do you understand? You want a job? A couple more years. Miss Britt.
He wants to know what's the difference.
Downrigger and an outrigger? Great question. The downrigger is nothing more than a lead weight using that same kind of release clip that you would put down at whatever depth you want it to be. It can be on a reel. Some people even put a downrigger on a rope, something as simple as a rope. And you let it down a certain distance, you move the boat forward, and it's like an underwater downrigger. So the outrigger clip would use the same, you would use the outrigger clip in the same way, but you'd be using it instead of spreading it out away from the boat, you're putting it down deep, and it really works great this time of year. Good question.
Are you snelling the hook to the leader on the kites, or are you tying it?
I use believe it or not, we also, you know, sell these yo-yos with 15 foot, actually they're like 14 foot 8 to be tournament legal. And we use a fisherman's knot on the hook and a perfection loop on the loop end. Actually, this is an old one. We use uni knots on mono. Today we use all perfection loops. I've tested all these, and I found that the perfection loop and the fisherman's knot is right there around 90%. And it's you're not going to probably break the knot. You're going to chafe the leader on a sailfish. So one of the other tips, when you do hook a sailfish or a big kingfish or whatever it is, and he makes that hard run, back the drag off. It's no different than what I said about bait. You get a big stringer of bait, back the drag off, let him run a little bit. The biggest enemy you have at that point is yourself. Trying to panic because you don't want them to take the line. The best thing they can do is take the line. 99% of the time, you're not going to run out. So let them go. It's really the best thing you can do. Another question? Go ahead.
Are you familiar with the big red clip?
Yeah, I use this. He's asking about the diesel clip, a big red clip. I used it in Australia in 2007. I fished down there for about a month with Peter Wright and ran his boat when he came back for the IGFA Hall of Fame thing. And that was the clip of choice at the time. And they hold about 15 to 18 pounds. And they're good clips. That's what we used back then. But yeah, they've kind of gone out of production. And I mean, it was just coincidence. I didn't know that when we started making ours. And I hate to admit this, I didn't know ours was going to be that strong. I was hoping for about 15 pounds. And it just the way it was designed and the thickness of the material. And like I said, my friend who really knew different materials, and I got strength out of it that I didn't expect. So the needles are made out of the same material as the clip. So, you know, you're pretty impressed with it. So, hey, it needs something that rusts. So like the synthetic screw, the tension screw, that's not for price. That's so it doesn't corrode. And the other thing that happened, one of the other version changes, we started out with stainless screws. And believe it or not, when you're running the boat, the screws would back out and fall on the deck or fall overboard. and then you didn't have a screw to replace it, it was, it was worthless. We can actually imperfect the threads in a mold, so if you turn one of these clips, you'll see there's a little tension like a nylock. There's a little resistance, so it never vibrates. When you set it, it never changes. So those are the reasons you go to a synthetic screw. I've learned a lot just messing with them. It's been a real neat journey. We even make now like yo-yo holders out of the same material, synthetic, that you clip these onto and suction cup them to your console, so you can just keep peeling leaders off all day, or you want to wind the kite line onto your reel, you just put it on there and spin it off. So, go ahead.
What are you fishing for this week?
What am I fishing for? What?
This week.
Pretty much the same stuff that we normally would. It's dolphin. There's actually a good number of dolphins still offshore. What happens this time of the year is we don't have usually big schools. Every once in a while you'll find a big floater and get surprised. But you don't catch as many dolphins this time of the year, but they're really quality fish. Most of them are gaffers. And it'll go usually into October, late September, October. So we'll still dolphin fish the next few weeks. And then on the way in, golden tiles and gray tiles are closed, but we fish for the vermilion snappers and yellow eye snappers, and then kingfish this time of year. And believe it or not, there's a few sails starting to show up. So that's the beauty of South Florida. We live in such a great place. People say South Florida doesn't have a season. I disagree. We have about 10 seasons. Sailfish season, cobia season. Swordfish season goes all year pretty much. Spring and fall is really good, and some in the winter. But, dolphin and yellowtails and amberjacks. I mean, we're really privileged to live here and have all the choices. But, like I said in the beginning, for us here it starts with bait. So that's why this is such a focus. But I'm happy to answer any more questions you might have about trolling or live baiting or anything that you have questions about. I'm happy to share.